Jim Heuer, I got to ask you again. Even though we're overly negative or we're realistic, whichever way you want to call it, the Cardinals are 13 games back in the division, and Milwaukee shoved last night with Brandon Woodruff against the Reds, but Reds lose.
Yep.
Okay, they've lost 2 in a row now. San Diego loses again in an epic, 16-inning game that everybody was talking about on Twitter when I woke up. They've lost 3 in a row. San Diego just can't win a baseball game. So here are those plucky Cardinals. Okay, they beat the Tigers. They prevent the season sweep from Detroit. And the Cardinals just hang around. They're 3.5 games back. They got the Pirates. I know the Pirates took the series this past weekend at Busch Stadium, but the Pirates are not very good. I would think the Cardinals will do much better here coming up starting tonight. We've said for a while, to me, that over-under of, man, you're really in it. If you can get to that 2.5 is the over-under. Can you get to 2 right now? Despite all of the bad things going on, despite Jack Flaherty on the IL, the Cardinals here are still 3.5 games out. They've played 125 games. So what's that math? They got 37 to go. And despite all of the warts, Jim Heuer, you're telling me there's a chance.
Unfortunately, I have to agree there is a chance.
Why is it unfortunate?
Because it's just prolonging the agony. It's the wound that won't heal. It's festering. I think it's better. Nope, it's not better. I think we're not there. Same with yesterday. And basically the 2 games against Detroit, right? I mean, Tigers are playing better baseball. And maybe next year, let's see what they do in the offseason. They might start pushing a little bit in that division. They're not there yet. But my goodness, you barely got a win against the Tigers yesterday. You almost coughed that one up. You had Reyes. Look, there's just so many things where you point to. Let's start here. That you go, that's wrong, and this is wrong. Flaherty's hurt again. We're not sure about Michaelis. You're not sure about your big 3 in the back side of the bullpen because they're just getting worn down. You see Reyes wilting quite a bit here in the last, 3 weeks? I mean, it's just from overuse for Alex Reyes.
Here's another thing, and I'm a huge Alex Reyes fan, but we know one of his, he had all those injuries where the guy was frustrated.
Yeah.
Remember, one of them was he punched a wall. And then did you notice he punched the mound? He punched the mound really hard yesterday.
Oh, I missed that.
When he blew that save, and I'm thinking, man, I hope he doesn't hurt his hand. And he's joked about it this year that he goes and hits the bag now, right? You can take out your frustrations on the heavy bag, on the speed bag to make sure you don't injure yourself. But when he blew that save, you could see how frustrated he was, and he slammed his hand pretty hard on the mound. I'm thinking, please don't injure your hand.
I hate to bring it up. We might find out, today. Oh, Alex is not available today. Well, why not? Well, he's got some soreness in his hands.
Phalanges.
Yeah. That's the frustrating part about this whole thing, Charlie. It's that you see the opportunity there, and you're just going, man, to use the great Doug Vaughn's phrase, if we could just get hot, we could win this thing. It's not that difficult to do. If you put on a 6-7 game win streak, you have the wild card right now, more than likely, the way the other 2 teams are playing. But you just don't see it happening with all the holes within the roster. That's why I keep going. Unfortunately, the agony will continue for at least another month.
Somebody on Twitter, I should have gotten a screenshot, and I can't find it now, but it was a funny tweet where they said, basically, welcome to the 2021 National League wild card game between the 110 and 52 Los Angeles Dodgers and the 84 and 78 St. Louis Cardinals. Couldn't you just see something like that where they somehow, and if it's the Cardinals, I still don't think they're going to make it, but if it's the Reds, it's going to be a team that's, now the Reds are doing a little better, but it's going to be a Dodgers team that could very well win the World Series, that could pick between, ho-hum, Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler, maybe Clayton Kershaw to start, and in one game, 9 innings, a Reds team, a Padres team, a Phillies team, Zach Wheeler, right? I mean, Wainwright with the Cardinals, you never know with a 9-inning baseball game. So that's probably the situation the Dodgers will be in because for whatever reason, the Giants, we're all waiting for them to lose. And we're now 120 games in, and they're probably not going to fall off.
Look, the Dodgers are 9-1 in their last 10, okay? And they're going, we're just lighting up anybody that comes in our way. And they go, yeah, but we're still 2.5 behind in the first place team, the San Francisco Giants. That's may be the most amazing thing in itself, what's going on around the game, is that the Dodgers are just lighting it up, and they can't gain any ground on San Francisco. Now, I'll take a step further with your wild card irony. Imagine if the Dodgers do catch the Giants, and the Giants get the Cardinals, who they've only beaten twice all year in that wild card game, and they go, the Gosman against Waino, and they get eliminated in a wild card game. That would be total injustice. It'd be great for Cardinal fans, but it'd be totally injustice.
Right, and that's one of those things where we kind of talk about this on paper. You know, the Dodgers scare you, not just in real life, but the Dodgers scare you on paper because you look at the names. It's like back in the day when you're in high school and you saw the other team get off the bus and you already lost the game because they were so big. You're like, oh, my God, we just can't
play
compete.
Them.
When you look at the Dodgers, I know they have a ton of injuries as well with Mookie Betts and all that, but when you look at the names out there and Kershaw and Scherzer and Walker Buehler, they scare you. Whereas you look at the San Francisco Giants, and they're actually 2.5 games better than the Dodgers, so I give them all the credit in the world, but they don't scare you. You go into that series and you think, yeah, okay, Kevin Gausman, okay, Alex Wood, DeSclafani, all right, they got some good players. I mean, Chris Bryant is a huge addition, obviously. And they've pieced together their lineup where they basically go platoon style, kind of like the Rays did, right? They can righty lefty you, and you got veterans Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, and Mike Yastrzemski. They have a bunch of outfielders that they can kind of rotate in and out. But you look at them and go, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if that scenario happened. It would not surprise me one bit. In fact, I may even bet on it that the Cardinals would beat the Giants if they got to a wild card game.
You're probably right. I think I would probably lean towards that, too, because they, as you said, they don't intimidate you. Gausman can still have great movement on his pitches, but you're like, hey, we can get a couple runs off this guy. Come on. And Waino? Yeah, well, I'll take my chances with Waino.
Right, and so the last couple games, and even when they lost to the Tigers in Detroit a while back, as you mentioned, Detroit's been playing much, much better. You look at their record now after a really slow start. I bet you the last 2 months, they've been just as good as the Cardinals. I mean, the Tigers aren't that bad. They're 61-67 on the year now. The Cardinals are 64-61. They're not far off. Detroit beat them 3 out of 4. And you also, I'm not trying to make excuses. It's factors. You look at the last 2 games, they faced Casey Mize, who we all know, he was the former number 1 overall pick. That guy,
he's going to be a good
can
one.
Throw. I mean, he has legit number 1 overall pick stuff. And then Tarek Skubal strikes out 10 in 5 innings, and this is a guy who's right there, number 1 or 2, going back and forth, being the strikeout leader in the American League. So those were tough tasks, and I know after the game, Mike Shildt gave his team a lot of credit for playing in awful heat circumstances, which I agree with, but also the Tigers went through the exact same thing, and you had the day game after the night game. But facing Detroit and those 2 guys, I'm going to give the Cardinals credit for, that you get a split, you move to Pittsburgh, and you got to get at least 3 out of 4 against Pittsburgh. You never want to go in and say they have to sweep. We did that last weekend. They lost 2 out of 3, but you got to start beating up on Pittsburgh again.
You definitely do. It's got to start tonight. We'll see how that plays itself out with the pitching matchups this weekend. I think it's Michaelis tonight. Tomorrow is Happ. Saturday, it's going to be Waino, and Sunday is to be determined. That'll probably be a KK start at some point, as long as we find out that he's recovered from his outing from last time, that he's okay. I mean, and here's the thing. As I say, we're talking about, there's so many holes. Well, Flaherty's hole in the rotation now, you could say, goes to Michaelis. If he's able to answer the bell. So basically, you're the same team you were 2 weeks ago. You just subtract Flaherty and you put in Michaelis and you get KK in there. So it's basically the same team in that respect. Now, I'm not saying Flaherty is equal to Michaelis. Don't get me wrong there. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of you have a veteran starter to replace a veteran guy that you lost, you're kind of having an equal setting in that situation.
Yeah, and with Michaelis, I want to see him in a non-Pirates situation, right? He's got a really favorable. Amen. He's gotten a really favorable couple starts coming off his injury, which was probably by design. Remember, last week they could have used Miles Michaelis to finish off that Brewers series, right?
Yep, and
they gave him 1 extra day, which I think makes a lot of sense, and also ease him in a little bit. So we know Miles Michaelis doesn't have the same type of stuff as Jack Flaherty, but I agree with you because Miles Michaelis, he should be, if healthy, he should be an innings eater. He shouldn't be a 5-inning pitcher. I know he was that first time out, but that's his first time coming off, 2.5-ish months out. And he's a guy who throws strikes, where the big issue with the Cardinals, not just starting rotation, but bullpen, early in the year was they were just walking the world. And Miles Michaelis has never been that guy. I do think it's interesting, it's ironic, it's kind of funny because we do this all the time where we always say, oh, now we have 7 starters. Who's gonna have
every time?
Who's gonna go to the bullpen? So basically KK had to go to the bullpen for one appearance, and they were able to bring him in and go long and kind of stay on his day where he'll be right back in most likely to the starting rotation. And we said the same thing. Look, okay, they get Happ, they get Lester, they pick him up at the trade deadline. We know that Flaherty and Michaelis are coming back. Okay, who's going to the bullpen? And basically everything, because of injuries, works itself out in a week where it wasn't an issue whatsoever.
What are we going to do? LeBlanc's been too good. You can't take him out. Oh, he's hurt? Oh, well, that answers that question. You're right. It happens that way every time, even more so in the offseason. I think the last 2 off seasons we have said with the Cardinal staff, there's 7 guys. They're going to be great. There's 7 guys that could start at any given time. You know what? They might go to a 6-man rotation, guys. It's possible. They could do it. Well, you end up where you're at right now going, we don't even have enough.
The funny thing is that is always the storyline. Now, not this year, but if you went to the year before, you could probably legitimately throw 10 guys out there, right? That are at times big league starters. And I'm talking about if you go the offseason entering 20. You're looking at Waino, Flaherty, Dakota Hudson, Miles Michaelis, Carlos Martinez is always talked about as a potential starter.
Yep.
And then all those guys, Gomber is no longer here, yep. But Daniel Ponce de Leon, always spoken about as a potential starter. John Gant, even at times Ryan Helsley's name was thrown out there. And I'm probably forgetting some, but right there was about 9 guys
right,
where you're like, okay, and you know what? You knew some of those folks were going to be perfect fits as long guys in the bullpen, or you keep them in Memphis and you can bring them up whenever you want. And then this year now, you're having to piece it together. You're going out and getting J Happ. You're getting John Lester. And I'll be the first one to say, I actually thought the Cardinals' pitching depth was good entering this year. I think you could have made the case they go out and get a veteran starter. I get that. We also got to remember that Ponce de Leon, for the most part of the season, hasn't given them much of anything. Ryan Helsley, for the first part of the season, it just wasn't working. Carlos Martinez, injured. We knew entering the year that Dakota Hudson was not going to contribute, if at all, and maybe we see him at the end. I don't know. But, man, there's just been unbelievable injuries to the starting rotation. And you look across baseball, the Cardinals aren't the only team dealing with it, but, man, that's just a ton of starting pitchers that have been out.
There's the potential. We got guys, and that's why we get to the frustrating part of the month of June when the Cardinals didn't go get anyone, and that's where they're at right now. Again, 4.5 out, or was it 3.5 out? Sorry, can't shortchange them a game today because they're 3.5 out. If they would have picked up 3 more wins in the month of June by going out and getting somebody, they'd be in the wild card, even right now, today. And I wouldn't be sitting here going, we're prolonging the agony.
Yeah, so right now the standings, you got Milwaukee in first, 9.5 up on the Reds. The Cardinals are 13 games back, but Cardinals only 3.5 games back for that second wild card. Chasing the Reds, and the Padres still in the mix, obviously. The Phillies still in the mix. Yesterday's game, as you're watching that, and just, I get it. It was so hot. That's a huge factor. It's a midweek game. It's an early start. It's the Tigers. The team this year overall, we've seen a lot of really rough crowds throughout the last month or so, last couple months when they've gone to full capacity. Yesterday, it was alarming how few people were in the stands. And I understand a lot of that was the heat in the day game, but I'm at Fox 2 calling the highlights of that game. And when you're watching the crowd and the stands, when Goldie hits his home runs, and you're seeing where the ball's landing, and then you're watching him round the bases, because you get it. Bally Sports Midwest, they also want to put a good product out there. So if they can zoom in on fans and not show just these swaths of empty stands, they're going to do that. All right, you understand broadcasts do that. But when you saw Paul Goldschmidt rounding the bases and you could see back to left center, there was nobody in the stands. I mean, that was the most alarmingly low crowd I can remember. And again, I'm a prisoner of the moment, but I can't remember that few people at a Cardinals game unless it was one of those crazy 4-hour rain delay situations where you start back and the game ends at 2 a.m.
I remember there was a makeup rain out. That's the kind of thing where you had 13. Yesterday, I'm surprised I didn't hear it's Family and Friends Day at the ballpark. Just family and friends at the park, because that's all there was. And you're right. When you looked around at times, I was like, I've seen high school games with more people than this. It was rough, but the heat had a whole lot to do with it. And then the fact that what incentive do you have to go down there on that day, yesterday, in that heat? It's not like you're going, I got this great baseball team on a run. I can see good pitching. They're not on a roll. They're not on a run. That's the whole purpose of this thing. There is no incentive. There is none for anybody unless they got a great giveaway that day. And they've had some good ones. Got to give them credit for that. They are pumping up the promotions. But, man, just days like that where you just go, yeah. And that would have never been that way 5 years ago. You would have had easily 25 to 30,000 in there.
And that's where yesterday, a part of it was just the oppressive heat. But that's not the reason that the crowds have been very small for a long time. We've been discussing this on the show now for weeks and months here. And just randomly, I've gone to 3 Cardinals games as a fan since the All-Star break. So starting the second half, and all 3 of those games, the crowds were alarmingly low. And some of those were the best baseball nights of the year. They were mostly midweek games, but some of those were very pleasant, 75, 80 degrees against the Braves there, where the heat wasn't an issue. So it's not just yesterday's heat, it's overall, and it's COVID. It's just kind of a wicked mix of a mediocre-ish, slightly above average team. Yesterday, the heat, COVID, everything going in with that. And some people on the text line are weighing in. Joe Boozrum says, guys, the real issue is if they hang around, and I think he means the Cardinals in the standings, if they hang around in the standings, this front office may not feel the pressure to do something this offseason. I don't know. I think this year feels different. It really feels like the fan base is ticked off about them not being more aggressive. I also wonder, if you're the Cardinals and you look at this year's team and you realize, okay, this team is not one piece away from the World Series. They're not. No. They may be 3 pieces away, 4, whatever it is. They're not close. Okay, maybe they get the wild card. You never know. You roll the dice with one game. They're not a legitimate World Series contender. Everybody would agree with that. And as the Cardinals front office looked at the landscape of what 2021 looked like, knowing now that Yadier Molina's coming back, you got to think Waino's coming back. And I don't think being sentimental should have this much of influence. But if you're the Cardinals, you say, okay, 2021, we're not that great. 2022, we got the money coming off the books, even though a lot of that's going to Nolan Arenado. But you got Fowler coming off the books. You got Carpenter coming off the books. You got, Andrew Miller coming off the books. Okay, if 2022 is going to be the last ride for Yadier Molina, if it's potentially the last ride for Adam Wainwright, maybe that's the year where it makes sense to really go all in. If you're not going to do that this year, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I could understand how they're thinking that way.
I would hope that they realize they significantly have to do something to jumpstart the fan base, because there's just not that interest. And I get what the texter's pointing out. There is that danger of, well, we were there the last week. We were just a couple games out of the wild card. Well, yeah, but you would have had the wild card had you been more aggressive, done a few more things. And that's the whole point. You have to be a little more aggressive here. And season ticket sales will be a big factor in that. Now, we can talk about reasons why this year, we're talking about heat yesterday. We could talk about COVID situation. We can talk whatever it is. But in an off season, what moves the needle is the season ticket sales. And if season ticket sales aren't coming back, then they got to go, hey, we got to get some buzz going here, because we got to go get a star. We got to get something that moves the needle, because there are just not enough people coming back to buy our season tickets. That will be the ultimate. They will notice that. Cardinal front office definitely knows that. They will frustrate you as a fan from time to time because of the lack of going out and doing something. But the reality is, if you don't show up, they will notice it.
Text line 855-282-8255. Get them in from the 314. Don't forget about Albert. That's the other one. You know that CBA, if there's not a work stoppage, you know that DH is coming to the National League. We talked about that yesterday. That would be pretty cool.
I think that is in the back of their back pocket. They're sitting there to what I just said about, well, season ticket sales aren't going real well. We could sell a whole bunch of season tickets right before Christmas if, like let's say the 19th of December, we get a deal that Albert's coming back. Season tickets, Christmas presents for everyone, and that'll be a definite move. Now, does that make them significantly better? Not really. It makes them it'll make them better on the bench than what they got right now. That's not going to win them a World Series by just having Albert show up at his age, but that will definitely move the needle on those ticket sales.
Right. It better not just be Albert if it is. You also got to get one of these shortstops. You have to get a legitimate shortstop. You have to find a way to upgrade there. I'm okay with going into 2022. If you like these three outfielders, what I would do is I think you could do this relatively cheap. And Jock Peterson comes to mind, but there's got to be another lefty outfield bat similar to a Jock Peterson that you could get on a one-year deal. I'm thinking of like a left-handed Adam Duvall type. That to me would be the perfect mix with the outfield. Because if you don't feel like, hey, Harrison Bader, he's fine. Is he going to be the everyday center fielder? I don't know, but we sure love him at minimum as your fourth outfielder. But if you could have Carlson, Bader, O'Neill, add a veteran left-handed outfielder, then you could mix up all those games. You could play matchup. You could have two lefties with a switch hitting Carlson and whoever lefty outfielder you get. You could mix it up where you have your righties. You could go three righties with O'Neill, with Bader, with Dylan Carlson as a switch hitter. I think that's a relatively easy move to make. But then you're going to have to spend some money for one of these shortstops. That's where the Cardinals could absolutely upgrade. And it's funny you mentioned potentially Albert. I can see the St. Louis Cardinals souvenir program. Now, do you want to market Nolan Arenado? Sure. Do you want to market Jack Flaherty? Sure. But could you imagine the Cardinals program? You could have the young pictures of Yachty, 2004, whatever.
Yeah.
And Waino 2005 and Albert 2001, and then you could have behind that a picture of them all in 2022 and kind of like the last ride. That would be pretty sweet.
That would be awesome. That would be a great keepsake too. I mean, for Cardinal fans, it's leaning that way. There's obviously that opportunity is right there. We'll see, but that might be the first move that they would make of significance to try and boost some ticket sales, because that's a ticket sale move. That's not a win now move. That's a ticket sale move.
Text line, first summer living here since 2013. I'm going to a game in 2 weeks only to get a John Daly bobblehead and do a meet and greet. That's the only reason. That's from driver Rob. The Bo Weevil of Bevo Mill says, Charlie and Jim, I bet there were more stadium employees than fans at the game yesterday. Yikes. And let's
be
see.
Right on that one.
One more. The Bell Fountain Belly Buster says, Charlie, what sort of appetite would you even have if the Cardinals made it into the playoffs now that Jack will most likely be out the rest of the year? I would prefer we just be out of it. See, I would never see that line of thinking. If you're a Cardinals fan, okay, I get wanting to punish the front office in a way to say, hey, do something. But if you root for the St. Louis Cardinals, are you really telling me you'd rather have them not make the playoffs? I would never think that way. If you get a one-game wild card, you're going to take it. You're not going to say no. I'd rather on the last day not make the playoffs.
I appreciate his thoughts because you're going. That just gives them that excuse, right? See, we were there. But look, anytime you can have playoff baseball, let's not be spoiled, Cardinal fans. You take it. Don't become the brave fans of the late 80s or the 90s, I'm sorry, where, they just never showed up anymore. We have that a little bit here now. Appreciate that you get in. Yeah, you're not going to have the best team every year, but if you have a chance, you take it. I'll be honest. The 2011 team, I didn't think they were going to win. They came on an unbelievable run, but I was like, they don't have a chance of winning
against the Phillies. Remember, who were the juggernaut of juggernauts at the time?
It was like, come on, man, this is the 102 or 103 win Phillies. Ryan Howard, all that pitching. We can't. Ryan Theriot, for crying out loud, is playing on the. They can't. Well, they found a way. That's the beauty of the playoff tournament, as we'll call it now. The best team doesn't always win this thing, and it's been that way for quite some time. That happens. The 2016, I did not think they were going to win. I didn't think they were going to beat the Mets. I was like, come on, man, you can't beat that Mets lineup. I think it was still Wright, Delgado, Beltran. You're like, you can't go through that on 7 games and not get run out of the building in New York. But they did. They found a way. And don't forget, that Tiger team had swept, was it the White, whoever they swept somebody.
The A's?
Yeah, was it the A's? And they
Maglio Ordonez.
They were just sitting there waiting for the Cardinals, and you're like, I don't know, man. They just swept somebody. They're playing as good as they can. And they threw the ball all over the. That's why you never know, and you take your chance.
No doubt. Joe Booz Rum says, guys, a sneaky play at shortstop for the Cardinals next year. I like this as well. Is Marcus Semien. Would be cheaper than all the other options. Thanks. Marcus Semien is having an amazing season.
I like that guy.
His age 30 season for Toronto, all-star. Leads the league in plate appearances at 555. Leads the league in doubles at 34. He has 30 bombs from the shortstop position, and not a great batting average, 267, on base 333, but slugs, 523 slug. His OPS plus is 131. That's a guy where you usually mention, okay, Carlos Correa and Corey Seager. I know Lindor's already taken care of, but Marcus Semien is a really, really good player. So you wonder what his price tag will be as well.
That's a great call. 2 years ago, I thought he was going to win the MVP because he had come off a really good year. And I was like, you know what? He's a sleeper. Watch out for him. He's a really good player, and he is not at the top of that list, right? You're thinking Seager, you're thinking Correa, Story, and then, oh, yeah, Semien. He's a really good player, man. Don't just say, oh, yeah, there's Semien. He's a really nice – he would fit nicely here. He could play short. He could play second. He could DH for you because the DH is going to happen. So keep that in mind. He would be a factor on this baseball team. He would be a shortstop here, but like I said, he could play second. And I don't want to hear, oh, he'll block Nolan Gorman. Don't say that. Nolan is having a great year, and he's eventually going to be here. But we see the top teams in the National League right now. They all have multiple guys that can play in multiple positions. Don't be afraid of that, Cardinals, moving forward. I really hope they don't do that. That we talked about the Giants, how they can mix and match. We know the Dodgers can mix and match. The Milwaukee Brewers are mixing and matching right now with, don't be afraid of that. You'll find a place for guys to play.
And he won't be that cheap either. At age 30 here, he's making $18 million. So, is that a 5-year deal for $125? Is he going to get 25 AAV? He's making $18 million this year, and he's having a hell of a season. So, at least that's going to be 5 years, $100 million. But that's reasonable for a player of his ilk.
Yeah, I think so. I'd take a chance on him. If that was your guy, you said, okay, that's the guy you got, I'd say, okay, that's a legitimate player. He'll make this lineup longer.
And he could be right there in the middle of the lineup as well. He can slug it.